Here we go. Good morning. Happy Friday to everyone. Welcome to Maker That Money Season 2, Episode 3. I am your host, Pooch of Repkord. With me, as always, my trusty partner in crime, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop. And today, we have with us as our special guest, Mr. Andy Soderberg. Am I saying that right? Soderberg?
Soderberg, yes, long
Soderberg.
ago.
You may know him as Media Man 3D, but he is the, should we call you the founder, the head, the head honcho of the My Hero Me project?
No, so let me do a little
Intro for us. Yeah,
the little clearing up of that. So
sure.
I am not the original designer of the Hero Me.
Okay.
All right, that was done by a gentleman from the Dominican Republic back in middle of 2018, just a little over 5 years ago. It's still on Thingiverse.
Okay.
He created this cooling system that was modular. The ME stands for Modular Edition. That supported Creality, Ender 3, Ender 5, a couple of hot ends, and a couple of different fan types, and that was it.
Okay.
And he had to step away. His wife had a baby, so he focused on family and, left the involvement. I had been involved in using his stuff, giving some feedback, and I saw a real value in this, and I took it off from there in that I started making my remixes, and left the name the same.
So
in respect for it.
What shall we call you what is your title then in terms of this? I'm going to update your Chiron in real time here, so we get it right.
So I am you could call me the curator.
Curator. There it is. Okay, it's been updated. Curator, My Hero Me. And I didn't know the Me was modular edition, but we're going to get into all of that. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, welcome. This is a podcast where we talk about making, makers, all that good stuff, and the intersection of that and entrepreneurism. We record this just about every Friday live on YouTube, so if you want to interact with us, that's a great way. We love seeing some familiar faces in the chat. Let me give some quick shout-outs. Granted, 3D Musketeers, always good to see you, my friend. Mike, never let the machines win. I don't. We got G-Tech Studios, Andrew Rogers. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support, super chats, all the things that you guys do to help us keep this fun content coming. I know it's kind of niche and different. We're all makers. We all enjoy talking about making, but really digging into the weeds and really learning what it is to take that to a full-time job is what we like to really get in on regularly. So if you're listening back after the fact on your favorite podcasting platforms, we are on all of them, or just about all of them as far as I'm aware. And we welcome you to join us live sometime if you'd like to interact. There's also a call-in option if you want. There's a live Maker That Money hotline. There's a link right above my head on the YouTube stream if you want to just watch our bouncing, bobbling heads while we talk. And I think that's it. Do the usual, like, subscribe, bring a friend, and then give us feedback. All of our tags for social media are down below, including Andy's. So if you need to find us, and we always put that stuff in the description as well. So we appreciate you guys, and thank you for joining us this morning. Today on the pod, we are going to get into what it is all about. I just put a generic, holding out for a hero because I love a good title hook. But what I'm really particularly excited to get into, Andy, is talking about modular design, talking about building community, and your particular business model around. I know you have a very robust Patreon support group and other groups that we're going to get into as well. So that's a little lead into that. But before we do, we're going to do our typical, we have a little bit we do. We're very positive. We encourage everybody in the chat to do the same thing. We talk about our wins for the week. I feel like I need a sound effect. Wins for the week. Ding, ding, ding. Andrew Mayhall. So we're going to call you Andrew, and Andy, you'll be Andy, just so we don't confuse things. So Andrew, will you please start us off with something great that happened in your life, whether it's professionally or personally?
Sure. Let's see. I got some new equipment coming in. Expanding the
new toys.
expanding, my maker abilities, if you will. I ordered a brand new welder, and then got a new
TIG,
plasma
MIG.
cutter, a MIG, and then I pre-ordered a TIG, and I got a new plasma cutter coming in as well. So
Building out the metal shop there at
oh yeah,
what's your use case? Are you wanting to get more into
personal.
welding?
Yeah, it's just
Personal.
personal stuff. Yeah,
Little
I've had a
personal
welder
welding.
for a while. I've
Okay.
had a welder for a while, but it's time to upgrade.
There's something so satisfying about just welding and joining metal work in general. Andy, you ever do any welding or any?
No, that's I had wood shop in high school, but never got into the metal shop side. So that's all Greek to me.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, but we know you're a man of many maker skills still otherwise too. So why don't you give us a win for the week if you would?
Sure. I got a couple. I have a new client on the 3D print farm space, doing a project that I'm under non-disclosure on, so I can't talk about, but it's a very cool design. Something that's a patent is being applied for that will be 3D printed. And I've been working with that client the last couple of weeks on refining and proving out the repeatability, manufacturability of that his designs. And then the other, just before this podcast, I checked and saw my email that my Prusa XL, the shipping order, the shipping slip email came through. So my first day order of a 2-head semi-assembled Prusa XL is on its way 660 odd days later.
Ooh, that's exciting. And that's what hopefully it proves worth the wait. I love mine. And I know it's been a journey for the Prusa team to get that out there. It's been a wild time getting product launches and stuff like that done, as I'm sure we can all kind of relate in some level. So anyway, that's exciting. I can't wait to hear what you think of it when you get it, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Very good. My win for the week, I'm gonna go with. I've been just like on this wild organization kick, and I've used this one before. I've just been breathing some new life into some the rep rack setup that I've got, because I've just invested heavily in cleating all of my walls for various things already, and so building out like some actual like usable shelving. So the rep rack, for those that don't know, is just like a really basic open design that I put out there that uses EMT metallic conduit that's just like ubiquitous. It's probably one of the cheapest, most affordable, sturdy little things that you can get here. $6 a stick for a 10-foot stick at any home store, and I just love building stuff out of it.
I have a project with EMT going on for the summer for my wife's above ground gardening, creating a trellis system. I've designed all the corner brackets and all the dimensions to be able to use EMT to make a trellis for running the wires so that the plants,
Isn't it just the coolest stuff? Now you're gonna bend it, or are you actually gonna do some corner? Are you gonna do some 3D
No,
printing?
the EMT is all just going to be cut straight pieces, and it's all going to be assembled with polycarbonate or ASA printed corners and T's and triangles and elbows and ends.
I can't wait to see that. I love that stuff. So yeah, I was gonna say, if it's out and subject to UV, we hear ASA is good for that. Is polycarbonate good under UV as well?
That's what I hear.
All right,
I've never tried it. Cool. Yeah, that sounds like a good project. So anyway, I've been on a kick where I'm just making shelving out of it. So the main rep rack design was for just holding spools and stuff like that. But then I've since kind of developed some modular shelving, some parametric design for that. So it's really easy to just kick out. If you've got a CNC or if you got a laser cutter, and then I'm working on a printable version. So I like to call what I share PCL, or I haven't decided which order or whatever, but I like my designs to be multi-mode makeable, triple M. So whatever tool that you might have handy. I know that it's not necessarily ideal to be just printing shelving out of plastic, but if that's all you got and it works, I know a lot of us just have a ton of filament, and we're just it's one of those when everything is a hammer, a nail. I'm getting this
A
wrong.
nail.
Everything's a nail.
hammer.
Everything's a
Yeah.
hammer. You know, like
Yeah.
you got a 3D printer and you just want to print everything, right?
I've got no wall space.
No, you're a bookshelf guy. You're well read, it would seem. I'm
It's
describing.
actually,
Yeah.
I have to give credit. This is mostly my wife's books. She's a surgical RN and a homeopathic healthcare practitioner and a double Reiki master.
Ooh.
And so this is all of her medical and other books. So that's of The Office. That's what she has left. I've taken over everything else.
Yeah, for those listening to the podcast later, Andy's coming to us from the Lincoln bedroom in the White House. It was a very, very chic background, actually. And then there's a bunch of 3D printers in the kind of, and some metal racking, which I see as well, which is near and dear to me also. Tell us in the chat what your wins for the week have been, if you haven't already. Let me see if anybody shared any. Some commentary on the expensive EMT in Canada. We went over that on Liz's stream on Monday. For some reason in Canada, EMT is expensive there. I don't know if it's just not as commonly used, or there's some import issues with it, or if we're just spoiled here. I don't know. But that's unfortunate. But part of the thing with the designs I did, and we've seen tons of remixes where people have just used material that's more readily available to them internationally. I know there's been remixes to use, other pipe dimensions, stuff from IKEA, closet rod, whatever is easy, which is one of the coolest things about being a maker and seeing these like marketplaces that we talked about last week popping up where people can share designs and all that stuff. And that is a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about today, because Andy, I know that the Hero Me project is based on these shareable designs and all that stuff. But why don't you give us more of the background? You kind of started at the top, so we know what the basis is. But tell people where they can find it. I think you've mentioned to me that you're on Things and on Printables, and you have a Patreon. Go.
So the Hero Me project, all of the STLs are available and online for free. It's on Printables, it's on Thingiverse, it's on Cults 3D, it's on Thangs, and so that's where you can go and search and get it. The Hero Me, which is, for those who don't know, it is a modular printhead system and part cooling, and so it supports Hero Me now supports over 115 3D printer models and growing. I support over 47 hot ends. I support 37 different extruders.
Wow.
Over 20 different ABL sensors, 14 ADXL345 accelerometers and counting. 35
different. All the accelerometers, man. Yeah.
For Clipper, and then 35 different print fan combinations. So, this goes back to my 70s days where, tinkering on cars, I wanted to have a Holley carburetor and Edelbrock headers and a Hirsch shifter. And, everybody had their own particular brand of thing, right? And you needed to have a way that it would all, fit together and work. So, what makers are until the Hero Me, are having to either, if they can, design their own, if they want to upgrade from something stock, that's basically the core. Is all of the vast majority of the consumer 3D printers out there, part cooling is an afterthought. It's a checkbox. Oh, we have to have that feature. There's no engineering design done in these 4010 fans being slapped on the side of the printhead that have to run 100% to try and keep up. And for certain print scenarios, part cooling is not that necessary. But for a lot of people with PLA and PETG, part cooling is extremely important. But besides part cooling, they want to upgrade and change. So every different printer's got a different X carriage, got a different mount points, all these different hot ends. Well, yes, there are the E3D collar type mount. There is the Creality 2-screw type mount, but there are others. The Vorons have top mounts. So what I've done with the extending the Hero Me line out is build modular components. It's all based around this base. It's called the base, and yep, universal base. And so, on the front, you've got the heatsink fan. On the top, which we'll get into, is where the modularity comes in on hot ends and extruders. On the sides, you've got mounts for the part cooling. On the back, you've got standard mounts for connecting up to the interface plate with gantry adapter to an X carriage. On the bottom, there's mounts for accessories like an endoscope or hooking up to a mount point for accelerometers. So this design has been kind of locked in for the last couple of years now. In fact, that there's now over 600, going on 700 consumer or maker remixes and mods that are out there that I'm not involved in. So there's a real community in people using the Hero Me. But it all comes down to, what makes it really good is the part cooling. And so while I show off dual fan scenarios, it can be a single fan with dual ducts. But with a single fan coming down, you've got cooling hitting this side. Well, if I've got a part with an overhang over here and the cooling's coming from this side, you guys know what happens. You can get, drooping, right?
Droopies.
So you droopies, right? So that's what this solves, is getting full cooling. There's a lot of mods out there where there's two ducts and they just come down and the airflow just points at each other. Well, that doesn't create effective cooling because you get a lot of turbulence there. Turbulence is not conducive to good part cooling. So these ducts have all been designed and tested through computational fluid dynamics to prove that it's creating a laminar airflow. And so, in fact, the issue here is the nozzle, you see, is not in the center. It doesn't look like, oh, it's not centered. Well, actually it is, because the airflow is angled like a Y. All right. And when you've got airflow coming like this, it makes it easier to blend and flow and come out. So it's kind of an upside down Y. And the same thing is true for this side, is that you'll see a lot of cooling ducts where the airflow is just pointing across at each other. No, the airflow is coming down in a Y shape. So this creates a really nice laminar flow blend below the tip of the nozzle to do really effective part cooling. So that's the core of this, is having proved that this really does great design. There's a lot of examples out there. There's one on YouTube where you see, in fact, a Gen 5. We're now at Gen 7.4 over 5 years development. Wow. That using a Gen 5 version, guy on an Ender 3 did a bridge from two towers in the corners of his Ender 3 plate. It's about 240 millimeters. With no support and no sagging, going back and just building a bridge
you
all
had
the way
a
across.
Great video of that. I'm not sure if it was that video at Rocky Mountain Rep Festival, and people saw that and they're like, that's not real. It just looked surreal over that thing. So it's funny. You said something earlier that I just wanted to just touch on, the fact that cooling on 3D printers, in my experience, like, I would agree with you, like, to some extent, that it feels like an afterthought. And I think that might be changing as we get a better awareness and we try to print more at speed now, right? Because we're seeing how critical the cooling is to get effectiveness at higher speed, right? Like how quickly that plastic is hardening, and then what that's doing to interlayer adhesion strength, because if you cool it too quickly, you can lose layer bonding. So one of the things that is interesting to me, and I can only speak anecdotally just from my experience, but I've noticed that like some cooling duct profiles seem to do great with some geometries, and others not so much. And so it's a hard thing to design for like a one size fits all solution, as I've seen it. What do you think, Andy?
Right. So the thing is, I can't say that I was precognizant of what would come, but
sure you were. Just take credit.
Say that this particular example is dual 4020s on it. I personally use dual 5015s.
It's the size of the fan, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah. And those who first see it and I go, well, gee, that's way too much air. Well, yeah, but you don't run it at 100%. That's the thing. The airflow here is done like at 30 or 40% volume to get really efficient cooling. And when you want to do that bridge, like I talked about, the airflow gets dialed up to 55, 65, maybe even 70% airflow. So with now wanting to print faster and faster, doing the speed benchy tests, etc., having something like this that can add that additional airflow can make a huge difference.
Sure.
So yeah, it's become more relevant as more printers go into a faster mode. Even if you're not going after speed benchy, trials, it's important to get the proper cooling out. So this whole thing was that I had Ender 3s, I had an Ender 5. I wanted it for my printers. I wanted to be able to choose an E3D V6 back in the day instead of the Creality stock. I wanted to go to direct drive instead of Bowden, and so I started designing this and riffed off of that design that came from the gentleman in the Dominican Republic to expand on that to add different printer models. So, this is an example of a gantry adapter. So every printer, their X carriage is going to be different. And so there's going to be a different gantry adapter for the HeroMe to mount to. So the HeroMe has its standard mount points. And when you put the gantry adapter on there, we now interfaced it to that printer. Then, I mentioned E3D. There is this is the mount piece for the V6. There's collar type or V6 style, and the way it works is it's like Lego bricks. There's little pogo pins in there that sits right in, and now that hot end fits in here.
Cool.
And if I want, say, Creality, stock, I have a mount for that, and that just sits on top.
So
and then two M3 screws.
Describe what people are listening back to. He's got what I would almost describe, and I think you've done this before, Andy, is like a Lego system almost of components that all the various parts of a 3D printer that are part of like what we call the print head, I suppose. The hot end that melts the melty bits and the sensor packages and lighting now and accelerometers and extruder and all of that. So sorry to interrupt.
So here's one for a Bondtech LGX. This simple one is for an Orbiter V2. This one for a BMG. So like I said, there's a single part. Instead of having to redesign and rebuild it from scratch or find a bespoke one for a given printer, here now you can start with this basic, and whatever hot end you like, whatever extruder you like, whatever ABL sensor you want, etc. HeroMe's got you covered. And if you don't, I can make one for you. And so that actually kind of leads into gee, Andy, do you own these 115 printers? No, I don't. So how do I prove that what I've made works? Well, the way that is done is through the community, in that someone comes up with a new printer. If the manufacturer's provided a step file of the X carriage, great. I can just model to that. Oftentimes they don't exist. So I have instructions for someone to go and disassemble their print head, take a photograph of the X carriage, and then do about 30 different calipered measurements to get me the dimensions. I then model that X carriage, and then am able to create the gantry adapter. Same thing's true for the hot ends. Now, in the hot ends and extruder area, the manufacturers are a bit more supportive in that they often do supply. Fadis, for example, is great. Every single different hot end, they've got step files for it. Bondtech with their extruders, they've got step files for it. So I take those and I use those to model then the parts needed to mount that component to the HeroMe base. And so this particular example, what we've got down here is a Fadis Dragon. with a BMG LGX, a pair of 4020s, and then I don't have it on here, but out the side would be a ABL sensor of either Creality or any other. In this example, while it's the same extruder, here now it's flipped the other way, so I can handle forward facing and reverse facing. But now this particular hot end is the Creality Spider 4 with the ceramic, and so it's very, very I made a mistake of actually doing the calculation a year ago of how many possible combinations, and I call it a mistake because people kind of got scared away from that. But at that time, of 115 different printers, 47 different hot ends, 37 different extruders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it came out to over 35 billion possible combinations
from, a lot of combinations.
From these 650 different SDLs.
Well, let me stop you for a second. That you've done a fantastic job of just appealing to that like crack addiction of the maker, of like being able to tinker and work and try all different things. So we talk about a number of different applications. I do a lot of 3D printing for actual part production, and so like I make it a point to try not to tinker, even though it's still hard for me. But I know that I'm not necessarily the typical, and I know a lot of people like the journey is the adventure, and part of that is just like, what, I want to try this new extruder, I want to try this new thing, and it is fantastic to have a system where you do not have to tear everything apart to do that. If you want to, what, I'm going to just upgrade this piece, I print out one new bracket, I bolt it onto the system and all that stuff. And I think that's great. And you're able to build a very robust community around this because it doesn't have to necessarily be a one size fits all. Right. Now, and I can tell Andrew's probably thinking the same thing. As a business-minded individual and stuff like that, and thinking about supporting this and all this stuff, you have all the advantages of the modern era: continuous improvement, very rapid development, abilities to release new things as new product comes out, which it does every day, which is fantastic. But the support around that, the documentation requirements around that, like all of the logistical components that make that a challenge, how do you handle that? How do you mitigate that?
So that's where the business comes in. That's the business side of it. For the first 4 years, there was no money that I made. I didn't put any effort into, gee, how can I reimburse myself for the thousands of hours invested in designing this, and so I was answering not so much emails then, but comments on posts on Thingiverse, etc. Thousands in a year, over 4 years. And it got to the point where it's become, at that time, was a half-time or more job that I was spending above and beyond my day job. And so I finally decided, no, this is not sustainable. I can't keep doing what I need to do, keep doing my love of doing 3D printing, and make this supportable. So I had done documentation, I had done FAQs, and there was a very, compared to today, a much simplified version of it that was available online. And I took it offline. I went behind Patreon paywall a year and a half ago, almost coming up 2 years in January, to make it possible for me to continue to do this and be able to afford to keep the lights on in the house, because I had a company I was working for that merged, and I got merged out.
Oh no.
and so this became, okay, I'm going to turn my hobby into a business. And so I created a Patreon account, and so all the SDLs are free. You can take them, you can use them, you don't have to contact me. But if you want support, if you want documentation on how to do this, of the 650 and growing parts, you only need somewhere between 5 and 12 STLs for any given setup.
Right.
Now, the organization of those STLs that are on the services where you can get it, printables, Thingiverse, Things, etc., are in a zip file, and it's organized in folders and subfolders by component, by brand, etc. And the file names are very well defined. So if you really know your printer and your components, you can download that zip, go through, find the files you need, print them, and set it up. There are thousands of people who've done that without ever contacting me. But for those who want support, I've got Patreon, and now also Thangs membership and printables memberships, where for $5 you get my 56-page parts selection and color illustrated assembly guide. That's what you get for $5. And then for $10, you get the documentation plus 2 videos. I have an orientation video, it's a half-hour long, and I have an assembly example video that's a half-hour long. So those get included. Plus you get access to my Discord server, where there is a community of a couple of thousand like-minded makers out there who contribute as well as ask questions and help the community, and I contribute to. Then there is a $15 tier, where additionally you get access to a private channel on the Discord where you can get direct support from me within a couple of days. For those who may be watching or reading this who are my patrons, I know I'm behind. This is I'm playing catch up here. It's just me, and there are a lot of you, and I very much appreciate all of my patrons. But I have some catching up to do on questions, so I'll put that right out there. And then I have a $30 tier where all of those same things you get, plus you get a monthly hour-long video chat like this, where you can ask me questions, we can talk about it, I can walk through it, etc. So yeah, I did that, like I said, in January, a year and a half ago, and it's taken off way better than I expected. And it's allowing to keep the lights on. It's not a profitable business yet, but it's working that direction. And this year I added Rocky Mountain Rep Festival I went to. I went to Murph in the Midwest. Unfortunately, I got invited, accepted, but couldn't go to Open Sauce. And ERF, I got accepted, but there's another reason I'm not going to be able to go to that one. So I need to find someone to sponsor me. If you're out there.
That seems to be the common lament, right? It's like there's just more events than there are money and time, and
so it's am I making money off it? Yes. Is it open source? No, it's not open source. It's Creative Commons. You can take these and you can make your own mods to them, and use them. But my knowledge, my support, my documentation, my videos, those are something that I, put value on. And if you want that support, you want that information, that's where you can support me by becoming a member for 1 month or several months.
It's a really clever way to kind of go about building a business. Is you have this intellectual property that you've been building, and while releasing the digital files and assets for people to build their own and create, that's awesome for like the community piece. But then sharing that knowledge, there's value there, and I think you're recognizing that. And so I think that there's going to be more of these businesses start up over time. Because it's a really interesting model.
I find this model fascinating, and I've been, I'm kind of dabbling with it as well, because I've got a printables club. I'm not everywhere, like a lot of people are with, being on all these other platforms, because it seems administratively like it could be a challenge to manage all of that as you add more of them. And that's one of the things that I look at as a business owner a lot of times, is like, how well does this scale? So when you talk about your personal time, absolutely very valuable, probably the most valuable thing we have. And Andrew likes to point out a lot, like, as makers, we don't typically value that component nearly as much as we can. So I love hearing Andy say, this is where the value is. I think it's very clear to people that if you draw a line in the sand, here's what you get for free. Here's what you get for paid support. It should be. And I understand that people's consumer expectations vary wildly across the board, right? Everybody's just like, I should get this for free. Entitlement abounds, especially in our culture, in the States here. But talk to me for a little bit, Andy, if you would, about scalability, because the more patrons you have, the more people that need your time. Your time is finite. Do you have to start hiring people?
That is,
what is that? What happens?
So that is the exact big challenge and crux. There is this flex point where it's way more work for one person, but not yet enough income to make it where I can hire somebody. So, a lot of YouTube, Joel, everybody knows Joel, 3D printing nerd. He started off just doing something in his basement because he loved it and doing it. I started watching him probably in the first month or two after he got online, and he grew it and grew it and grew it. And there was a point where it was overwhelming for him. It got to a point where he could afford to leave his day job. But there's this inflection point where you can't do it alone. And now he's got a team. I don't know how big his team is, but I know he's got at least a couple of people that are helping him build his business out and his brand recognition, etc. So that is my challenge, is how to get over that inflection point where to make it sustainable, to make it so that I can continue to grow what it is that Merlin Media, which is the business end of this, where HeroMe falls under. There are other things, my 3D printing farm, etc., falls under Merlin Media. I have a consulting business on the web development side that falls under my Soderberg Consulting.
You're a hustler, man.
Business.
You got like a true entrepreneur. He's got like 10 gigs going at the same time.
You have to have multiple gigs, but then
your side hustles have side hustles.
That's right. They do. They do.
So, but that's the thing. If somebody's thinking about doing this, I don't know that I could have done this if I didn't have the background that I've had in my own business experience, having been in product development and product marketing. I worked for Atari in the 80s. I was product manager for the 600 and 800 XL home computers.
Wow.
I worked for Apple I worked for Apple in the 90s. I was the first QuickTime evangelist for hardware that makes what we see here possible, and doing digital video and interacting with hundreds of hardware and software companies to adopt QuickTime. And then, I had my own business for 15 years when I left Apple to do web development. And also about that time when the 2000 .com bust happened, I survived that in web development because I transitioned into working with colleges in redesigning your websites, and they have a need for web accessibility. That's a big thing. Everybody's website should be accessible for all people, everyone who's got differently able access. And so over the last 20 plus years, I've become a web accessibility expert. And so I consult in that arena. So yeah, I've got a number of irons in the fire, but the last 20 years, I've been an exec in software company doing global tech support, customer service, building customer success teams, customer support teams, and operational teams, so that we can properly support the services those companies provide. So I've absolutely understand what it is to build teams, to manage teams, and to build infrastructure. So with HeroMe, I've got now, an ongoing building out of whenever a new question comes in that I haven't answered before, that gets added to the FAQ. Ideas and requests come in that haven't been covered, it gets added to my documentation that's available through Patreon. And then to continue on, on the marketing side, to get the word out there, I've branded it. We've got the superhero, and the slogan that when it comes to cooling, everybody deserves a hero, right?
Yeah.
So everything from Hero Me coffee mugs with the slogan, to what was a big hit at IRF and RF. How would you pronounce it? Rocky Mountain one. Right, yeah. Everybody in 3D printing needs cable ties, right?
I love this,
So
guys. So he's holding up some swag here. He's
yeah, so
printed.
this is
They're Velcro based.
it's
Yeah.
logo. Yeah,
Or-
yeah. So I got these on AliExpress. I had sent them the artwork, and it was real inexpensive. And so I give these away, that has the logo and the slogan on it. And it's a real hit. So
if you're listening back, this is just all the rage of these days because we all have way too many cables to deal with. So they're just these little reusable cable tie Velcro things that he's had branded, and I think it's a really great idea for marketing swag. And he's got some stickers here too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so everybody, kids love stickers, and even us 3D makers, have our either a wall or a suitcase or something covered, with all the stickers. 3D, you get stickers, right? Or you get the ducks from Big Tree Tech. I've got 13 ducks lined up on top of my monitor here.
Got your ducks in a row, huh?
So and then the on the front here, one of the shrouds for the park floating fan is the Hero Me superhero logo. And then everybody's doing maker coins.
Your branding game is strong. Yeah, look at this.
Yeah, I've got my maker coin. So there's the superhero guy, and then on the flip side, when it comes to cooling, everybody deserves a hero. And then on the end,
look at that! Even the edge has.
Wow.
Yeah. The edge, it's got my Patreon and my website.
Is that printed in? Is that a multicolor print that you just cranked on probably on your bamboo?
My bamboos.
Yeah.
So I crank these out on bamboo, and they're great. So I've got a slew of those. So yeah, it's the marketing side, it's the promotion side, it's continuing to I say continuous improvement and modifications. And yeah, it's now generation 7, release 4. I do a release every few months. In about every year and a half, get a new generation. I'm always working on new things. There's coming, I did a tease at the shows. It was a little premature at the time, but there's going to be Hero Me Pro, which will be a kit form where we'll sell pre-printed kits for those who don't want to print it and do it themselves. They would be able to go in and from an order form, I have this printer model, I have this hot end, I have this extruder, or not, Bowden, I have these fans, I have this ABL sensor, etc. And from that, we'll get the items that need to be bundled up in a kit and sent off. So it's bespoke to their exact printer setup. So
I gotta go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of now moving towards the traditional, manufacturing and productization, of your designs, but leveraging additive manufacturing.
Licensed.
Okay.
The key is licensing. So will I start it off? Sure. Do I want to be in the manufacturing business? Not really. I do. Like I said, my Win mentioned, I've got a couple of clients that I do additive manufacturing for custom things, and this one new client that I can't talk about that is got a great idea and a great product and something that's been around for hundreds of years, but this new take on it is like, once you get it in your hands, you go, why didn't someone think about this way back when? Because it's just so obvious once it's in your hands. So I'm really, really excited to be working with this client on this new product that's going to be very easily 3D print manufacturable. And in the 3D printing space and manufacturing, it's all about shipping, right? That's where the real headaches are. Pooch, you got to ship your stuff all over. Andrew, you got to, especially you've got real challenges. I love 3D Gloop, guys. 3D Gloop is the bomb. I use it all the time. And so the idea with licensing is to get it that closer to the last mile, maybe the last state, to get it printed somewhere, and so that the shipping can be really low cost and really quick. So that's the model I'm working on there, is to try and take this for Hero Me Pro in a license scenario, where I find a couple partners spread around the country and also spread around the world. I've been talking to some people in Germany and Italy, who maybe taking over the Europe side, and yeah, they they license for me for each kit, whatever parts number it is. Will be a flat license fee, and they can sell it, for whatever. If you look online, Voron kits, right? LDO sells Voron kits. A lot of people sell Voron kits. If you want to get just the pre-printed parts in Europe for a printhead assembly, an Ep3 or something, you can be spending 100, 120 or more euros on just those printed parts.
Sure.
Right. So, there's a market there for this. And I think a Hero Me bespoke system for each person, being able to get it customized with a thing for $70 or $80, I think that's a steal. In my research at Murph and at Rocky Mountain, I found that there was wide acceptance. In fact, people who would otherwise print it themselves, they say, you know what, I'd buy the kit and I'd print it then for my other printers, right? So there is been a strong interest, and so that's a way I'm going. So yeah, it's, for me, from the business side, talking about the MTM, Maker That Money, it's multi avenues, multi-layered, multi-segmented, to find a way to leverage your maker craft into something that is sustainable, even if it's a single operator, right? So
lots of nuggets in here that just are like, setting off all my tingles, my Poochie senses. License to manufacture deals and stuff like this is a really fascinating subject to me, because I've tried to crack this nut personally with Repbox and with some other stuff, and while in the theoretical realm and writing it out on paper and doing the plan and stuff like that, it makes a lot of sense. In practice, it's certainly not easy. Now, I think a lot of this is going to depend on what the product is and what level of complexity there is. But obviously, the compromises that you make when you hand off manufacturing are making sure that the quality is to standard. You're basically having to support the manufacturer. So this is almost like something of a franchise model, where you have to provide a lot of the details around what the quality assurances are going to be, what the packaging needs to be. And then, of course, regionally, just annoying little details like this, like the packaging that we use here in the States is not ubiquitous in Europe. And so we have to come up with either substitutions or do different packaging. And so what's sexy in this day and age is the idea of distributed manufacturing, and that we want to get that last mile bit in and take a lot of that cost of like freighting things all over the place out of the equation. But you really have to. There's a lot of people in the maker world that talk a good game. They're like, oh yeah, I can do that, and they gloss over all the things that are actually the important details, like the make. Like, yes, you may have a 3D printer and you can run these parts, nonstop, but that's actually like the easiest part of the whole thing. And so I will be very curious to hear how that goes for you. I know that what you have a process of adding threaded inserts to a lot of these things, so that adds a manual labor process, and creating standards for like get good part adhesion, and it's easy, but try doing 100 or 1,000 of them consistently to the same depth every time. And so you have to advise on making proper jigs and all sorts of other things that the average person doesn't have to do.
Right.
Now, one more thing, and then I'll let you go on this, because there's just so much great stuff to talk about here. We talk about taking you started in an interesting spot where it's like we have it's not an open model, but we have a make your own you know, a kit, an instruction build of sorts. And we've seen people do that all the time. And you're starting to realize, okay, now we can start doing pre-made ones, and we look at the size of the market. And when you think about the amount of people out there that think that they want to print their own, but then ultimately go, you know what, I'd rather pay the $80 or the $100 or whatever the price ends up being. There are arguably far more people out there that probably just want to buy it than there are make their own. But when you're making a name for yourself, you're building community, all of those things. Like, I like the pattern that you're building on top of, because you're proving out that there is interest, that there is a market, and now you're layering the next thing on, which is a big thing, by the way, going to manufacturer. And especially if you're going to do it yourself, if you're going to license it, there's a lot of other things in that. So I commend you for that. I'm curious to know, you know, what you're optimistic about, what you're pessimistic about, what the size of the market you think may be in terms of the thing. And I love your notion that people want to buy one, because I'm the same thing. I'll buy one because it's easy to get an understanding of what I need. And that's the best way to understand it. And then I can make more myself. So it's great that you have that 1-2 punch, that availability.
Right. So I'm big on analytics, very, very big on analytics. I'm not a mathematician, but, you know, using the tools that are there online now, doing modeling of charting out downloads and you know, people using visits to the website, and tracking the funnel of people have an interest to visiting a website, to go, oh gee, I'll look at the product on printables, I'll download it, to I'll actually print it, install it, to those who then I'll support it. So it's this, for me, I'm finding that it's this typically a 10%, right? And so it's just, I need more eyeballs. So in the case of over the last 5 years now, and actually this week is the 5-year anniversary of when he stopped and I started on doing things with the Hero Me.
Okay.
That there have been over 1 million downloads of the various permutations of the Hero Me in 5 years. There have been tens of thousands to, I would think, over 100,000 that actually end up getting made. There are thousands and thousands who over the years have posted questions and posted, you know, images or videos or pictures on Facebook and everywhere of having implemented it. And of those who go to, say, a Thingiverse or Printables and actually download it, I get about 10% of them go to and look at Patreon, my memberships. Now on Printables, I can look locally. And then of those who visit Patreon, when I was first taking off, when I first started offering this, I actually got contacted by marketing at Patreon wanting to interview me about what I was doing, because they spotted something before I did, where they knew something I didn't know. The typical YouTuber who is fairly well known, who does YouTube videos, who has a Patreon, the statistics from Patreon is roughly for every 100 people that visit their Patreon page, 3 or 4 will sign up. Well, that's 1 or 2% above spam, right? When my first 4 or 5 months, for every 100 people that visited my Patreon page, for every 10 people who visited, 2.5 or 3 would sign up. So about 25 to 30% closure of people signing up.
Wow.
Well, that's, it was blew me away. And my numbers now, almost 2 years later, is that for every 100 people who visit my Patreon page for the first time, 10 to 12 will sign up. So it's that 10% model. So that's the thing, is getting the awareness. It's the marketing. I'm doing this interview with you guys. I did one with Zombie Hedgehog on ZNZ 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've done, there's a number of them out there. There have been reviews of the Hero Me. I'm a member of many Facebook groups that are different, you know, cover different brands of printers
Mm-hmm.
to get the word out there. So it's a lot of marketing, but getting that funnel in of people to look at it who are interested, so that, as you said, Alan, if you know, if people want to tinker it, maybe print themselves, but the market for those who would probably buy one either for themselves before they print it is even larger. Well, if the market size of what it is that I've scoped it for those who are interested in printing it themselves, then I'm very much looking forward to what my license model could be. And yeah, you're absolutely right at pointing out the new challenges of quality control, of supporting those who I license to, etc. So, but those are things that in, you know, my past lives I've done and you know, I'm skilled at. So yeah, I'm excited for where this goes. But
And by no
yeah,
means, to be
it's
clear, do I say any of that to be discouraging. We love
no
talking about these whole things.
Mhm.
Obviously, you draw on a wealth of experience and stuff like that, and I know that these are things you're well aware of. I'm not saying this to tell
yeah,
you anything. I think just
no
having a
no
discussion around this is interesting. Fantastic, man. This is
Yeah.
great. And so, you know, we've covered a lot of territory and gotten into some interesting things. Maybe to wrap up, you know, give us a little bit of things that maybe you're excited for, you know, new versions to come. Talk about, you know, what the future might hold here.
Okay. So in the Hero Me world, there is for my patrons, there's a version specific for them who are at the $10, no, $15 level and above. Get access to the step files that we're making. So, by the way, always for those who are in the know out there, you may already know, but those who aren't, all the design work of all these 650 odd parts has been done in Tinkercad.
Tinkercad.
Wow.
We love Tinkercad.
And
Very capable, free CAD package. I started in it as well, and that's great.
to move on to something like Fusion 360 or Shaper or Sculpt or whatever, you gotta completely unlearn and relearn. So I'm in the relearning process for those to be able to do, because Tinkercad doesn't do step files.
No, it doesn't.
But the
It does OBJ though, I think, or it can import at least. I don't know if it can export. Go ahead. Sorry.
it can import the meshes, but then you still gotta rebuild it. The for patrons, they get access to a magnetic version of the Hero Me, so that
cool.
to disassemble, to get at the stuff from behind, the whole piece comes off. It's keyed, so it's locked in. So yes, it can survive a
crash.
Crash, but also survive the accelerometer testing that gets done.
It doesn't shake
the
itself
shake
apart.
test.
Yeah.
Right. No. Right. But so it's keyed, locked in, but you know, pull one lock part out, and the whole piece can come off without having to get in the back and
that's wild.
disassemble and screw it. There's also the Pro version is a front mount. So where Hero Me Gen 7, you know, for your X carriage, it mounts it all mounts to this gantry adapter from the back, and then the gantry adapter gets mounted to your X carriage. With the Hero Me Pro, it's front mounted, so 4 screws and the whole assembly comes off. So there are additional new improvements being done.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I'm excited for the future. Yeah, there's lots of room for growth, and again, more new printers, hot ends as they come out. What we haven't talked about is obsolescence. Bamboo is a good example, right? It's so I got several bamboos here behind me. Love the printers. It's closed source, but it's not a problem for me. These things just work for me. They're my go-to. I've got Enders. I've got Ender 5s. I got Ender 3s. I've got Prusas. I had 7. I sold 4 of them to be able to buy more bamboo P1Ps.
Mhm.
But, you know, and the maintenance parts for these are really expensive. But this is a, you know, the printhead, there isn't a Hero Me for a bamboo. There are going to be more bamboo-like printers going forward. So, you know, I think there will always be a market for maker tinkerable 3D printers. But as this gets to be more of a consumer thing, you know, it's the Macintosh moment, 1984, big switch where you could take that thing out of the box and be up and running in 5 minutes. Bamboo out of the box in 15 minutes and you're printing. So yeah, I'm, you know, very cognizant of that, of you know, how big and how much of a market can I scoop as things move, you know, towards this. So
Appliance
it's
grade,
it's
yeah.
branch yeah, so it's branching out and looking at other things that are going on. The one Pooch that you and I shared, that you were a nice beta tester for, but unfortunately got hit with a great advancement from E3D Online with their Revo.
Yeah.
Had that not happened, this might. So what I've got here is a Mark IIIs Plus, and what I'm going to talk about could easily be done with a Mark IV. But this is
Yeah,
a
he's
mutant.
removing
So,
he's
you know,
removing the print head with
yep,
the product by Wham Bam called the Mutant. That
yep.
just is a one lever pop and allows you to take off and swap out your print head rapidly,
So
which is a cool design.
the thing with Prusa is two things. One is they've got a well designed but very hard to maintain should there be issues, that printhead assembly. If you need to replace the hot end, you need to deal with a clog or whatever, and this is a printer that's in a production environment, right? It goes on your bench for 2 days or more and the
Yeah,
machine's out. So you
I
either
wish 2 days.
have a
Yeah,
right, you either have a
like 3 weeks.
spare
yeah,
sitting there that you run in,
yeah.
but that printer's out of business until that's dealt with.
Right.
So with the Mutant, if you've got this spare printhead module
Yep.
ready to plug on, you know, here's one with the Mutant faceplate.
Yep.
That one goes bad. I just put another one on, and I'm back in business in 15 seconds.
Serviceability
And
is
so
huge in
right,
business, obviously, and we don't, as a
so
personal thing, like that's not something that most people care about, but it's a great advantage you bring up. Yes.
so the one of the disadvantages with Prusa is that it's really hard to maintain. So this is an idea to solve that problem. Another thing though is Prusa is that makes it really manageable for them to sell kits. They've got these built-in tests. Prusa software knows where that nozzle and ABL sensor are at any given time.
Right.
It's got these calibration tests. If you don't pass, you don't print. All right.
Right.
And so what I did to make it, because for those who are not seeing it, this is a much wider, in fact, 30 millimeters wider printhead assembly than what Prusa's is.
Right.
Well, you go, gee, if I go and home that X, that's no longer where the home is from what Prusa did.
That's right.
Well, if you look close, if you can see it, I've reverse engineered the geometry and created mount points to widen the x-axis, to lengthen the z-axis, and such that no build volume is lost. It passes every single calibration test. So it's just a matter of, yeah, there's some new parts to print, but you can turn a Prusa into a Prusa Mutant, so you can have this replaceability. And I saw a big market in print farms for it, and Pooch was very, very interested and willing, and so I modified one of his printers for him, and he put it in his production environment, and then
Still have it, still
E3D
use
came
it.
out with their
Yeah.
and they came up with the Revo, and the most common thing is swapping nozzles, right?
That was the vast majority of what was most appealing to me, was the rapid nozzle swap. Now, what you bring up is an interesting point. Now, I'm thinking about, in terms of machine failure, you're absolutely right. I would say 80% of the failure problems could probably be attributed to something going on with the print head assembly. So the extruder, the hot end, the pinda, the sensor, and all that stuff. So there is value in being able to rapidly, I'll diagnose that part on the bench later, swap this thing in.
Yeah.
cost of that. There's a lot of other factors
Yeah.
that key into
So yeah,
that
the
practicality of it.
overhead though is that I know you thought about and we talked about is that with something like this is you've got a lot of time and energy needing to, if you've got already a print farm, to rework it, to recreate and reassemble and kit those to take advantage of, say, a Wham Bam modular system. But if you're building it out from scratch, you're buying these Prusa or Prusa clones, you're building them in the first place. Well, if you build them with this parts instead right up front, you've really not wasted any time. But yeah, refitting an existing print farm is a lot of labor and a lot of time.
Well, not just that, you're off the reservation. So you did a good job to design to try to stay within the bounds as best as possible with firmware.
And no firmware changes.
Firmware changes and stuff like that. And there was some, as I recall, there was some little things about like maybe a calibration wouldn't work or something like that. But that wasn't the biggest deal, although I am finding now, even with the Revo setup, with the latest firmware, as they're releasing advanced thermal models and stuff like that, now I have to have a forked firmware to support Revo, and the appeal of that is becoming less. Now, that said, we're already looking at Mark IV in the future and analyzing, like, can we still milk, this a little bit further, or do we need platform changes? I don't know. A lot of that stuff is still to be determined. I think there's still plenty of great life, and the Mark III ecosystem is going to live on for quite some time, and part of the benefit of that Prusa ecosystem is that they will continue to support it for quite some time. They still release updates to Mark II and all that stuff. So if you're in the market for some workhorse capable stuff, actually, there's never been a better time than now to probably find used Mark IIIs. Pick up one of Andy's on the secondhand marketplace. There's some good value in that.
Yeah.
But let's take two questions, if we could, really quick from the chat for you, Andy, and then maybe we'll close up there with a little ask Andy some questions. So first one comes from Vast CNC. He's curious to know what your churn. This is a great question, and it might be a little personal, but if you're happy with sharing, what's your churn for memberships? What do you think the primary challenge is to that membership model? So when he says churn, how often are people subscribing and unsubscribing?
Yep. So the Hear Me is the Hear Me, if you think about it, it is a weekend to maybe 1 month long project. It's a slice in time in your life of a 3D printer, right?
True.
You want to upgrade it and add it, you come to me and you could subscribe for 1 month because you got what you needed and you go on. In the first year and a half with Patreon, because they only have a membership model, 30% of those who joined basically joined and canceled. They get 30 days, but they joined and canceled because all they wanted was the documentation.
Sure.
All right. And so there's this, churn. Well, again, big on research and big on analytics. Those are really not churn. Those are buyers. They bought a product, right? They bought a document. And so my churn, the thing is, it's still, the average life of a subscriber is still growing for me. So that's the good news. Out of 20 odd months of data, I'm at an average subscriber is 9 months.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I love how into the analytics you are, man. This is great. This is good info.
So my churn is really, when it comes to churn, is 10 to 12%. And now do
you think that's average, or do you think I have no concept?
I don't really know how it is compared to, if someone's big into a podcast, they're going to subscribe and they like that topic. I got a friend who does an airline podcast, and they, they're in it for years because that's their hobby. The Hear Me is just this slice in time. And so one of the things that I'm going to be doing is expanding on that and set of services, in that, I've got a lot of knowledge of, kit printers. And so I'm going to be expanding what my patron services and information are to things that extend, more window of time of someone's involvement with their 3D printer, from buying and configuring and setting up to tuning and using. Yeah, there are a lot of people who do YouTubes on that, but having a single place with a community of people who share and have a like-minded use, I think I've got a window there to kind of to grow that Hero Me beyond. I've got a track record there. So yeah, now that Patreon has sales ability, those folks who subscribed and canceled now simply buy. They go and to the shop and they buy the docs or they buy the videos. So yeah, it's been very interesting tracking that and following it. And I absolutely monitor my summer months. It's you know, things drop off in the summer months because they're going outside, they're spending time with their kids, whatever.
That's right.
It's you guys. I watched you guys your podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago where you talked exactly about this. What's it like for the year? Where's the business? And yeah, it's fall, winter, and spring for me where my growth is. Things slow down in the summer, and my total numbers will taper off, but then they pick back up. And again, I've got 2 seasons, two year cycle seasons to have shown this, so things may change. But yeah, it's
let me stay on that for just a sec.
About 25. Yeah,
that's a really interesting thing that I think a lot of people miss. Well, maybe don't miss, but don't think about necessarily, is like the experience of seeing your business through a couple seasons, so that you can take those analytics and understand and strategize, is so valuable. But until you've done that, it's hard to say. But excellent point. Let me go ahead. Go
ahead. No, I was just going to follow up as saying is the direct correlation on my stuff is the more active I am in Facebook groups and other social media avenues, Twitter, etc., the more people and more traffic I get in the door. So that's really where my challenge is being able to stay on top of and active. And that's where, again, that earlier we talked about the inflection point of where's your time, your valuable time, where I, gee, could I have an assistant that I could, give the FAQs and go and listen to and look for Hero Me related posts, etc., and respond to. That's the gap I need to fill. Is that I've been really lucky in that there's a group on Facebook called I Love to 3D Print, put together by a gentleman named Robert. I forget how to pronounce his last name. He's in Texas. He's a bookkeeper by day, but he's starting a print farm with Enders. And his 30 or 40 Ender 5s, Ender 5 Pros and Pluses, every single one of them are Hero Me. He posts 3 more times a day videos and stills of his finished print. And in that photo in the background is the Hero Me printhead. So I've got a great, example of a print farm where Hero Me is the go-to. And awesome. There's a lot of, so. Go ahead. You had another question.
Yeah. So more from the chat, and we got a couple more coming in. One from Mitch, our dear friend Mitch 3D. He asked this at Murph, but have you played, or do you have any plans for Delta printer effector designs for this?
I've talked to at those shows. I talked to Delta owners, and the challenges there. I have in the past owned one Delta. It was Kickstarter, the failed Kickstarter, although I did get one from it, and the Tico,
the
little
Tico.
Small,
oh man,
yeah. So and this is an anecdote. What got me into 3D printing was a Kickstarter. It was the Print M3D, the little 4-inch by 4-inch by 4-inch printer, $300. In fact, I still have it up on the shelf. That's what got me in. And then Tico was the second one. And I spent a lot of time with that. And that, of course, is not, it didn't survive, etc. But Deltas are much more robust and complicated than that. But the space constraint, it's a big deal on space constraint.
Yeah.
The other thing that I get requested all the time is, well, what about the Hemera? What about the Sprite? What about the BIQ H2? That's all of these new integrated extruder hot end combos.
Yeah.
Well, they're much physically bigger than what will fit into, a Hero Me. And so, no, there are no Hero Me's for those integrated units, but I am working on bespoke for each model, Hero Me inspired part cooling ducts that would also have an ABL mount and an ADXL 345 mount, so that they can get Hero Me quality part cooling, because that's, you know, a big lament for those people who bought that is that there's not really great part cooling out there available for those integrated extruder hot end combos.
You know, it's so fascinating to hear this because there's parts of this that just are really appealing to me when I hear them. I'm like, oh, you get to play with all these different, like you get to spend this time doing design and all this stuff. But then like the business side of me goes, that's terrible. You're constantly going through these opportunity cost evaluations. Where the general public doesn't care that they don't accept as an answer a lot of the time. You're like, I'm not going to do that because like the size of the amount of people that have Delta printer, no offense, Mitch, I love Deltas. I have a Delta that's been non-functional for like 2 years now. But when it comes down to like the business decision side of things, you have to go where the you know, the biggest opportunities lie. And if you start tailing off into these other cases.
But then the compound is Hero Me wouldn't be what it is if it weren't for me going over and supporting these edge cases. Yeah. It's the collective now. There are, you know, many dozens of the 115 printers supported so far that are niche printers, but they're from a manufacturer that has a family, etc. And you know, there's a big following for the Anycubics. There's a big following for the Elegoo Neptunes. There's a big following, obviously, for the Crealities, you know, out there. And I'm evaluating everyone. That's the thing is, where I get the most fun is I love doing the design work. I love doing the prototyping and design. I think we can all agree we like that stuff. Yeah, yeah. I just, you know, look up and go, 8 hours went by. Oh my God, where did it go?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's finding and making those decisions about if it's only this one thing and you don't have this ecosystem around it. Yeah, it may not be the right business decision, but adding that one additional level of, you know, so anyone else going, oh wow, people come in and they're just confused, go, oh, this is way too complicated, and I'm working on that. But others going, wow, this has got support. This has got a lot of effort into it. It's got a lot of design into it. Yep. He's got my model. Oh, I see in the notes that people have made requests and he'll make, you know, one for them. It's the interaction with the community that has helped make my generations of the Hero Me modular printhead system successful.
Absolutely.
Is been from that interaction and feedback and requests.
Absolutely. And I hope that you're able to continue to do so, but you're only going to have more and more and more and more of this. And like I said, because your time is finite, you know, coming up with the calculus of where the best opportunities lie, and then the internal struggles that you're going to find with yourself, where the things that you're actually excited to do are not always the right business decisions to make. Yeah. So balancing that is
again, we're back to that inflection point.
Yep,
you know, is it big enough, profitable enough where I can bring on resources and other people part-time at least or whatever to allow me to continue to focus on what I do best, and versus putting in, you know, 60-80 hour weeks. Pooch, I don't have to even know, but I know you're putting in 100 hours every week. Whether you're directly in your business or you're at home, you are always going as a small business person. Got, you know, this is what you're invested in. It's all you think about, really. You know, you spend as much time with your family and your kids and your dogs or cats. But until you can get to that, you're never going to sit back and go, but that you get to a level where, okay, it's an oiled machine, it's running, you know, I know where I need to focus on to keep that ball going uphill and getting better, right? Versus the underlying mechanics of it.
Yeah, well, and to finish out my thought, I was going to say it's not necessarily a bad thing that like I'll make the decision that's not the right business decision a lot of the time, because a lot of those things are what keep me sane too. So there is value in allowing yourself the joy of what it is that why we love doing it, and so don't always go one way or another. That balance is going to vary wildly from person to person depending on where they are. But I'm glad that you chased that down.
Your CR30 is one of those, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I still have it because it's near and dear to me, but it's not necessarily a great, choice. One more question, and we're gonna close on this, and it's a good one from Mike at Never Let the Machines Win. Do the Rep Rap festivals affect your memberships? Do you find a spike in membership when you put in the personal time at the event?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. My goals for going to those, because this is my first year doing it. Absolutely, I wanted to be able to have face-to-face discussions with people interested and share what I have but find out what their needs are to the local community who come and attend. But also, my other goals were meeting the vendors and meeting the influencers. And the show was exceedingly exceptional, successful for me for both those fronts. But yes, the showing off the system, having a printer there working and printing with it, answering questions, there absolutely were long-lasting spikes, not a spike, but then long-lasting, I think, accelerated growth. Again, it's the more, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Murph, whether it be Twitter, whatever social media channel, the more I can get out there and show and talk about and share, the more folks come back. But absolutely, it helped my Patreon community grow, was attending those. And I really lament not being able to go to ERF. It's the granddaddy of them, but other things preclude me. But yes, it was real, absolutely, and again, I went unsupported, no sponsor. It was on my own nickel. Invested my time to grow my business, and it was absolutely worth every minute.
Well, see, now I'm really glad to hear you come to that conclusion, because I've said multiple times that these events are so critical in terms of building reputation, legitimacy, all that stuff. So in my opinion, I know it sucks when you're getting started too, because it's not cheap to travel, but that is money well spent. That's investing in yourself, your brand. And Andrew and I, he probably gets sick of hearing me say it, but it's like, you don't have a sales problem, you have an awareness problem for the first couple of years. And so whatever you can do to get out in front of people, to have people experience it, and then ultimately want to advocate for you. One of the things I don't do well, I know how many people leverage Discord so well to build their own communities. I love hearing that stuff, and I know I could stand to be doing that better. So, but
the again, this is where, to that one point, my 20 years in doing customer service, customer success, it's not about making satisfied customers. That's the basis. That's the ground rule. Make customers satisfied. It's going that extra mile, that you are turning customers into advocates. They are now your free salespeople. If you can make it such that you've got something that they're so excited about, that solved their problems, that made their life easier, that they want to tell their friends about, their peers about, that's what makes a successful business. And it's putting the energy in to going that extra mile to help turn customers into advocates. That's what makes a business take off.
Well said. Well said. Well, listen, I think that's a great closing point for today. Andy, I want to thank you so much for your time and wish you, of course, all the success in growing this very exciting business, very cool design. I'm glad that it's enabling you to get some joy and engage with the community in such a positive way. And whatever we can do to help shine a light is fantastic. I want to thank you for the collaborative that we've done in the past with, the stuff you did with the Mutant is fantastic. And if you're still with us in the chat, thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you hopefully again with us next week, where we'll pick back up. And I'm really excited. We got some interesting guests in the mix, things to come. The conversation we had last week around the new maker economy and stuff has drawn some attention for some really interesting individuals requesting to be on to talk about some stuff. So like we can look forward to that and so more of the same. But thank you so much for tuning in, for supporting us. We are Maker That Money, the podcast where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby. And join us again soon for more conversation on such exciting things. So thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. Andy, you stay right there. I'm going to sign off of the stream, and we'll see you guys next time.